Javi, how you doing, man?
Very great, man. How are you guys?
Yes.
Very happy. 5-0. Can't complain.
Yeah. It's one of the few games I've actually enjoyed watching this year. So it's very refreshing to see that from the boys. Not just a result, but the performance as a whole. Fluid, emphatic, and most importantly, professional at home, clean sheet. So good to see that.
Yeah, we didn't see it so much as the game went on, but maybe in the first 30 minutes, we started to see some of David Raya's distribution, some of the passes he could pick out with Martinelli. I think there was one that went into Nketiah, I might be wrong. So from back to front, everyone kind of did their part. Smith Rowe and Havertz came in, though. What did you make of the rotation from Arteta? Because I think he looked at the West Ham and Newcastle away games coming up, and then probably the away games we've just had before this, and thought that's a run of 4 tricky away games all around this one game. Do you think he saw this as the rotation opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think he saw, and credit to him because, he was able to kill the game off early, despite, having a pretty, rotated side. I think I probably would have done the rotation against West Ham because I don't really prioritize the UEFA Cup that much, but fair play to him, man. Was able to take off some key players in the 60th minute as well. So, West Ham, Newcastle, I think Sevilla are our next 3 games. So good to see that, the lads, I think, are going to be pretty well rested for these tricky fixtures. But, I was still surprised to see, Nketiah start over Trossard, to be honest with you.
I was too, but he got a hat-trick, and he was good. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I side with Turkish on this. I think, him and Nora, entering a bit of a back and forth. I think that it's very, I'd say, unpopular to perhaps come on here and talk about Eddie Nketiah when he just scored a hat trick, but one game and one 90-minute performance I think isn't enough. Eddie's been at this club for a couple of years now, and yet the debate persists and continues despite the fact that he still has these kind of performances. And whether or not you can actually point your finger at it, Turkish says that you would still upgrade if you had the option, and then between him and Jesus, you'd go with Jesus. So why keep a player who can easily be sold for 30 million as a third option striker? Doesn't really make sense. But I think the best way to really summarize Eddie Nketiah is just, I like to use my analogies. I think everyone at one point in their life has dated somebody that was great. They were cute, they were a good time, they were, they treated you well, but there was just that missing X factor, no butterflies in your stomach that made you think, yeah, this is the one. And I think Eddie is just that. He's, I think, a placeholder and someone who every now and then surprises you, but it's just that X factor that makes you think, yeah, the likes of Martinelli, Saka, Ben White, these guys that we know are key, players in the squad, when they put in a great game, we just say, yeah, that's what we expect from him. There isn't a debate every single time they do something well, and yet we find that with some players, Eddie himself included, they score a goal and it's all of a sudden we're having a 3-hour debate. Why? I think that says that there's still some questions and something missing there, and you just don't see that with other key players in the squad that we all think are going to play a big part in Arsenal's future.
What is that something missing? Why can't we all just sit here? Because I'm in this, right? Why can't we all just sit here and say, he scored a hat-trick, he starts next game? Like, why, by next game I mean Newcastle away in the league, why am I still reluctant to say he definitely starts? What is that X factor? What is it?
I don't think it's something you can really put your finger on. It's something that you've needed to have seen in the early stages of his career, potentially, if that answers the question. Because, listen, I mean, Eddie done a great job today, first and foremost, and he has done great job before for the club. I'm not dismissing that. He has done against Man United last season, like I mentioned, the goal against West Ham today, the hat-trick. He scored, 5 goals now in the league this season. Cool. But the consistency has been a problem for me. Last season, he had the opportunity with Jesus' injury to nail down a starting spot, and he lost it to Trossard, who essentially comes in not as a false 9 striker, more as a winger or an AM. So now he's got another chance with Jesus. He's hit the ground running again. This time, even more emphatically. They're saying a goal against West Ham. This is a hat trick you've now scored, and been the catalyst for the win, man of the match by far. What do you do moving forward now? Because I look at City and I look at Alvarez as their backup striker, who is now, you can argue, an integral part of the first 11 and complements Haaland. So you can argue that he's not their backup striker anymore. But if Haaland's not there, Alvarez will start up top. Liverpool have Núñez. And as much as Núñez has been hit and miss over the last year or so that he's been here, we've also seen big things from him in the short space of time. You know, 2 goals off the bench against Newcastle away from home and you got 10 men. That is massive. You know, I'd put that up there with Eddie's winner against Man United in the last minute. You look at Newcastle, even Callum Wilson and Isak. You know, the rivals for us this season and the next few years are City, Liverpool, Newcastle. If we aim to stay up there at the top.
Yeah.
So I just look at their backups and like I said to you before, and Javi probably agrees. Do I worry about Eddie starting against Sheffield United? No. If we play Luton next week and Eddie starts, I still predict the win. I predicted a win today knowing Eddie was going to start or Havertz was going to start. I predicted a win. So I've got no problems with him starting these games. It's can you make the difference off the bench in a tight game? Can you be the difference in a big game if our big striker is not here? That's what I'm yet to see. And one of those big games is next week away to Newcastle. So this is another chance for him to cement down a shout at the very least.
Your thoughts on all that, Javi?
Yeah, spot on. You know, it's again, you know, I think Eddie Nketiah is definitely a decent backup striker for a team that I think is going to be constantly competing for the top 4. But it's what Turkish said, the players that he alluded to, the teams that he alluded to, are the teams that we're competing to go, you know, for those big trophies, you know? And it's crazy because I think that we would all still say that despite Eddie Nketiah scoring a hat-trick today, if you look at who is the more like-for-like player to Jesus in terms of the fluidity that we have become accustomed to seeing in that front line, it would be Trossard.
Yeah.
You know, and then even then, in some big games, you saw City in the Community Shield, Arteta went with Kai Havertz up top because he was more of an aerial threat. So again, it's nothing against Eddie, but there's just something missing there. And, you know, with Jesus, the fluidity he gives us, how good he is, that's his, I guess you can say, X factor. And everyone still looks at that striking position and says, we need a different kind of profile. We need somebody who's elite. But even then, Eddie scores a hat-trick today, and Jesus still walks into that starting 11 tomorrow. And that's the thing, that you kind of just have to ask yourself, you know, is Eddie just going to forever be a backup striker at Arsenal Football Club? And I think the answer to that question is yes. And then when you look at his counterpart, or, you know, his senior, Jesus, everyone says we need a different kind of profile, someone a bit more physical, someone who's more of an aerial threat. You know, you looked at this, you know, Raya Ramsdale debate. Everyone looks at the stats from last season of David Raya and how he's this, like, how distribution is that much better than Ramsdale. Well, yeah, when you're hoofing it up to 6'1" Ivan Toney, your long passing stats are going to be better than when you're hoofing it to 5'9" Gabriel Jesus. You know, so it's those things, and it's harsh, but it's just the reality. And again, I know I'm coming at a very unpopular time. The guy just scored a hat trick, but I think that this performance alone, or any performance he puts in against a relegation threat inside, isn't enough to cement, I think, his long-term future when there's perhaps better options out there.
Yep. Javi, always a pleasure chatting to you, mate. Thank you.
Love, bro.
Likewise, gentlemen. Take care. Big up.
Pleasure.